Welcome back, guys. So there's been a lot of talk as of late concerning the Nintendo 64 Mini. Is it coming? Is it pretty much confirmed? What's all this news about? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Is it going to come out? Is this confirmed pretty much, or is this just all wishful thinking? So just a couple days ago, Nintendo of Japan filed for a Nintendo 64 trademark, and everybody's abuzz. Oh my god, the timeline, the time frame, the way things have worked out in the past, this pretty much confirms Nintendo 64 Mini is coming this year. Now, the trademark, it's in Japan, it's all in Japanese. I'll put that up and link it. If you can read Japanese, that's all the better. I can't read it, but pretty much from having it translated, it's just talking about that they're re-upping their trademark concerning the Nintendo 64, the controllers, software, and the such. So yes, they have done this before for the other classic systems that have come out, the NES, Super NES, but they also do this to protect their, their properties, their systems, their games. Typically they'll renew trademarks on things just to maintain that. It makes sense. There could be Nintendo 64 games being released on the Switch in the future, maybe not a virtual console, maybe HD redos, I don't know, there could be something, right? There's definitely a lot of possibilities with that. And last year it was kind of a buzz as well, people talking about, oh, the next classic system is going to be a Game Boy, which I kind of argued against. I don't think they're going to do a Game Boy Classic Edition. But last year they did the same thing. They renewed their trademark concerning the Game Boy, and everybody was, well, that's the next system. Well, it wasn't, but or not yet anyway. I mean, anything could be surprising. They could release a Game Boy Classic, and I'd just be like, wow, I didn't expect that, and I still don't expect that. But I do fully expect a Nintendo 64 Mini to come out. So we've had a lot of options to play Nintendo 64. We could make our own Mini. Not necessarily the best solution in the world, but not bad, right? Odroid or Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi doesn't play Nintendo 64 very well. Odroid does. Plays it quite a bit better. Or you can always play on original hardware, right? Emulate, play on original hardware, whatever you want to do. But the problem with Nintendo 64 is, to me, the only people who can emulate it properly are Nintendo themselves, and they have shown that with their virtual console stuff in the past on the Wii, the Wii U, whatever. They have done Nintendo 64 games and they have played very well. Emulating on even the Odroid, to me, yeah, it does it a heck of a lot better than other systems, or single board computers anyway, but it doesn't do it well enough to really get me to be into it, especially because I already have a Nintendo 64 and a wealth of games and an EverDrive for it, so I have access to these games. But to have a mini system that I can just move around, that is what intrigues me. And a single board computer, a little small form factor computer, that would be awesome. And to support Nintendo, that would be even better for me anyway. I have the NES and the Super Nintendo Classic Editions, yet I also have those legitimate systems and EverDrives and a ton of games for both of those systems. But I still think it's cool to have these little options. And with all this buzz about the Nintendo 64, it does make sense. Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64. But then, at the same time, if they were to produce it and make controllers for it, the system's going to wind up being bigger, or the packaging anyway. The controllers are big. They're not easily just thrown into a box. So if you recall, I don't have an original Nintendo 64 box here, but they were pretty big boxes. And that was to accommodate, obviously, the system, but then the controller as well. The controller's pretty big. It's a lot bigger than an NES or Super Nintendo controller. So if you were to shrink this down, but keep the same form factor and size of controller, the packaging's going to be quite big. And that kind of worries me a little bit. If they were to be doing this Nintendo 64 Mini, would they change the controllers? Or would they stick to the same thing? If they were to just remake Nintendo 64 controllers, there were problems with the originals, with the way the analog was designed, over time it just grinds away, and then you got a limp little analog. So that's one thing that they would have to re-engineer, not just the encoding for however it's to plug into the system, but the actual physical design of it. The NES and Super Nintendo Classic editions, they didn't have to change the form factor or the design of the controller because the controllers had no issues to begin with. The Nintendo 64, the controller was pretty sweet, but a lot of people had problems with it. Just the form factor, holding it the way it is. Like our manly hands nowadays probably aren't going to be as comfortable holding a Nintendo 64 controller. And like I said, that analog problem. So are they just going to re-release with the same type of problems? I mean, the size of the controller, I would hope they wouldn't tweak that. I wouldn't want a bigger version. I would like to have what, I remember having as a youngster when the Nintendo 64 came out. But that analog stick's got to be fixed, right? So if this is going to happen, I don't necessarily think this trademark means it's going to happen. Is it likely? I think the chances are that it is, and I was really hell-bent on saying that it was going to come out this year, but I'm starting to have this feeling that with the announcement of the date of the NES Classic, the re-release of the NES Classic in the US and Europe, that with that being announced, and that, hey, the Super Nintendo Classic is going to be carried through the end of the year, so the NES and the Super Nintendo are going to be carried throughout the end of 2018, I'm thinking that's too many products to have on market as far as systems go. Nintendo Switch is doing awesome. SNES Classic is selling out everywhere, but it's been in abundance, I wouldn't say easy, but a heck of a lot easier to get than the NES Classic was when that first came out. Everybody who wanted one can typically get a Super Nintendo Classic. Scalpers were just screwed on this one. The NES Classic, they're saying numbers, everything's going to be good through the year. So I'm thinking with the NES Classic, Super Nintendo Classic, Nintendo Switch, Nintendo 3DS, Nintendo 2DS, where is the room for the Nintendo 64 Classic this year? I really have this feeling that we're going to be let down and it's not going to happen this year. I think it will happen the following year, but maybe not for a holiday release. You recall the Nintendo Switch came out in March the other year. That wasn't a holiday release. That was after the holidays, and it still boomed, right? Anything Nintendo's going to go people are going to go crazy for. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just, it's the hot thing, right? So I'm having a feeling that we're not going to see that Nintendo 64 Mini this holiday season. Possibly spring of next year. Hey, I may be wrong, and I will find out, and you guys will all find out if I'm wrong, hopefully soon, because if history repeats itself with like the NES and Super Nintendo Classic, if this Nintendo 64 Classic is to come out this year, there is going to be an announcement fairly soon. Either there'll be some kind of legitimate leak right before E3, or maybe legitimate word before E3, or during E3, or right after E3. So that time frame is pretty much now to the end of E3. So we have, I'm saying within the next month to 2 months, we're to hear something. If we don't hear something within then, it's not happening this year. So give it a month, give it 2 months. I'm sure we'll hear something. But I think right now, just with the trademark thing, that kind of piques my interest and a lot of other people, and it sparks that discussion because a lot of people want that Nintendo 64 Mini, myself included. I mean, I have access to these games, but I still love having these systems, not necessarily as a collector, but actually to use them, to take them out of my little space and have my family enjoy them, or have friends and family over and play these games, in the living room and whatnot. So I keep all my other systems in a separate area, for my own purposes, right? So I think the little classic systems are cool to me because then it gives me the opportunity to move that around easily and have a system for my kids and family to play along with me. I think it's pretty sweet. So definitely looking forward to it. we'll just have to wait and see, guys. So what do you think? Nintendo 64 Mini, is it coming out this year? Is it going to come out like I'm saying, possibly spring of next year? Just going to be skipped this year altogether? Oversaturated with Nintendo products this year? The shelf space, where's that going to be? You're going to have the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64 Mini all lined up. Possible. Anything could happen, guys. Seriously, anything could happen. Share your comments down below. I really do appreciate you guys stopping in. I do read all the comments, try to reply to as many of them as I can. Smash that like button, subscribe, do all that cool stuff. Hit that notification bell because they did change some things that, you know, you got to choose if you want to be notified, how often you want to be notified. Peep it out. Helps me out. Thank you guys, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out. Bye-bye.